you want a friend, then you must also be willing to wage war for him. And in order to wage war, you must be capable of being an enemy. Griffith and Guts have been living through a repetition of events since the beginning of the story, a spiral of events, but always slightly different. The power dynamics seem to invert with every encounter. As many have already pointed out, the latest chapters can be compared to what was going on with Griffith right before the fateful eclipse. Guts was going on his way to face Metamorphoses as well. When this post-Miura era began, I was quite skeptical and I had the mindset that up to this point is already enough. The last chapter Miura left us brought a revelation that was both terrible and incredible at the same time. It was even poetic to have that cliffhanger as the ending of my favorite manga. So, when Berserk returned, I followed it closely from the beginning, with the hesitation of course, knowing that it would never be exactly how Miura would have done, whether in terms of art, writing, paneling. However, this chapter 384 simply changed everything for me. I realized that Miura's touch was actually there, or at least a bit of his ideas, a confirmation. We found out a major revelation about Guts' birth. This is perhaps one of the most important chapters of Berserk in the last 10 years. Today, I want to talk about these revelations and how Guts and Griffith became friends.
Amigo.
Equals.
Amigos.
According to the philosopher Nietzsche and his concept of friendship. If you're liking this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want to help me keep making content. The title of the chapter 384 is The Shifting Mirror-like Waters of the Lingering Glow of the Idolic Fires. The moment I read this and search it on Google the meaning of some words, it reminded me of School Night talking to Guts about the reflection of the moon on the water in the chapter 142. And I don't think this was a coincidence at all, but we'll get back to this later. At the moment of his transformation during the eclipse, Griffith was running away from his own feelings, from his own defeat, which was caused by him exclusively. He was resentful. Griffith suppresses his feelings, whether by maintaining his composure after the slap of Julius, whether it's by humiliating himself, making the deal with the disgusting Ganon, or by not allowing himself to grieve by the death of the young member of the band. He maintains his composure. Everything is calculated, everything is for the sake of the goal, of the dream. He suppresses it so much, it overflows the moment Guts leaves the band. And now he, who had always avoided these feelings, doesn't know how to cope. And his way of trying to manage this is becoming resentful, placing the blame on someone else and finding the hope in the divine, in a promise. Which in the case of Berserk, we all know it's not that simple.
What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
And these feelings, describe it by himself as malice, friendship, jealousy, lust, regret, tenderness, sorrow, pain, hunger, that giant swirl of violent emotions which none are definite, but all are implied. This is what he's running away from. Among all my comrades and enemies, you were the only one who made me forget my dream. Since Casca's kidnapping, which again is another parallel of the confrontation, Griffith even goes so far as step on top of Guts' sword. At this moment, Griffith takes from Guts what is more precious for him, his precious thing. And we see Guts' decline. The sword, which before had taken the place of his purpose in life, had failed him. He could no longer rely on the very thing that had been his company through his entire life. As for Guts inside the Stupa, which like any Berserk fan, I went and looked it up what this Stupa is and what's the meaning of this. And to be completely honest here, I barely understood any of it. It's something connected to Buddha. I think stupas is some sort of religion monument being used for spiritual elevation. But what we see is Guts contemplating his life. his childhood, the revenge, the fear, the guilt. Unlike Griffith, he does not shift the blame. Instead, he blames himself for things that he didn't even have control over. He embraces the pain he allows himself to feel. 3 metamorphoses of the spirit I name to you. How the spirit becomes a camel, the camel a lion, and the lion finally a child. Okay, hold on. This is going to make more sense in a bit. According to Nietzsche, these are the metamorphoses that a person must go through for a evolution, for being a higher man. The camel carries a burden, but the soul suffers. It's effort without directions. It obeys. This is Guts when he joins the band of the hawk. He learns to obey. He learns to serve. So he moves forward with a strong body and a weary soul. But it's in the middle of the desert that the second metamorphosis happens. The camel becomes a lion. It wants freedom. It wants to be the master of his own desert. I know, camel, lion, what am I even talking about, right? I find it poetic, beautiful, and I think Miura intends to draw some of these parallels since his work screams philosophical concepts left to right, and I am definitely not the only one talking about this. What is the great dragon that the spirit no longer wants to call Lord or God? Yushao is the name of the great dragon, but the spirit of the lion says, I will. In my understanding, up until the chapter 284, Guts was this lion. He has been since the moment he left the band of the hawk. The lion stops being controlled and seeks to be the master of his own path. He has no direction yet. It's the lion saying, I will, for himself, refusing to obey the dragon one more time. And the dragon here in the book refers to imposed religious values, established morality. I'm drawing here a comparison between the dragon and Griffith, but it's on me. I can kind of see this parallel since, Griffith is part of this twisted divinity of this dark fantasy manga. But again, I am no expert. If you want to learn more from a more reliable source than me, this video from Anime Philosopher explains these metamorphoses way better than me. And by the way, even though this was posted 7 years ago, I'd say she definitely got her predictions right. The child is innocent and forgetting, a new beginning, a game, a wheel rolling out of itself, a first motion, a sacred yes saying. Inside the stupa, Guts encounter some being that we all believe is Flora, and with the most beautiful panels, shows the most difficult moments of Guts' life. It reveals in a cathartic way how he was born. Not yet full formed, he was born and fell into the threshold of the astral and the physical worlds, the precarious interstice. Not a creature of spirit, and yet not a being of the real. You are everything. A measure fresh start, a purification of the soul in the face of the tragedy. He who is now reborn. Guts is here absorbing this, reconnecting with his inner child. Flora then says that Guts must already know his other half, Griffith, who is also a creature of the interstice. I was intrigued by Flora saying about Griffith being Guts' other half. Could it be because he was born from the body of the one who was the son of Guts and Casca? So to me, she's talking about Griffith's second birth. The one that he kinda became a child, quote unquote. You can see that Guts is going through kinda the same thing as Griffith, but in a different direction. The same structure, but substance is different. And while Griffith hasn't stopped being a Godhand member, but now has agency in the physical world as well, my understanding is that Guts now realizes that he is a human with agency in the astral world. Perhaps the only one capable of achieving this sort of agency, the one that not even School Knight was able to. How exactly will this play out? I don't know. We need to wait the next chapters, which for our surprise is not gonna be taking so much. So I have high hopes. As you can see, I am someone who loved this revelation. To me, it makes all sense. Guts has always been someone who stood out on the brink of the depths since his very beginning. I want to highlight the moment when Shirke looks at Guts' sword and sees a energy coming out of it. To me, this was a clue, and I think it hasn't been fully realized in the story yet. What we've seen so far is Guts with a berserker armor and the Beast of the Darkness taking control of him when he wears it. I think everything that we've been watching, from Guts hunting down the apostles that appear in the eclipse back then in the Black Swordsman arc, to him literally piercing Slam during the barrels against the trolls, this very sword is still being forged, just like Skull Knight's sword made by Behelitz. I don't know. This is my theory. Back to the latest chapter, I didn't see this revelation as Guts being completely ceasing to be a human, but rather a human born during Testis. The only one who will perhaps have the agency to cause some change, the fish that disrupts the reflection on the water. Now, thinking about Chichi chapter, who can bring our tears to even the strongest person. It shows the flashback of Guts before joining the Band of the Hawk. He's interacting with a flower spirit who mentions that nobody else could see her before, so much that a glimpse of the flower appears along his memories when Flora talks about how it all began. Because of this, it became clear that this was something that Miura genuinely planning. The idea of evil, now quoting the last chapter, which the manga states that was created by the human mind, the collective conscious of human, to bring reason to the pain. To me, Guts was the product of the causality. He was the small change, the butterfly effect that in the future would cause the hurricane. To me, people will somehow stop believing these false divinities and then weakening them. And perhaps even Griffith himself will be affected by the feelings of the child inside him. Or to even be more bolder in this theory, maybe Griffith's feelings is still in there. Maybe the feelings are his own, and that will be the cause of his downfall, because he never really faced those feelings, facing his humanity. Now, still regarding the idea of evil, could humanity actually have the power of bring something out of existence? And what if Guts is the way that this would be possible again? I'm just here 3 a.m. overthinking about Japanese drawings. Plato used to say that the world of ideas is the perfect world. If we can imagine a chair, the chair is already perfect in our imagination. And when we make this chair, this is just imperfect reflection of the idea we had in mind. But in Berserk, it looks like Miura uses these ideas, but it inverts them. It looks like the real world create the ideas, and the ideas takes form, the supernatural thing. Shirke herself talks about this ideal world and how our nightmares actually exist but in another plane. And not just Shirke talks about that, but Skull Knight talks about this too. And speaking of Skull Knight, the chapter 142 is one of the moments when Skull Knight appears for Guts again. Skull Knight talks about how it's impossible to change the course of the God Hand's events. He gives an example of the moon reflected in the water, the shadow of the water, kage in Japanese, shadow, but not just shadow, but reflection. So the reflection of the moon can do anything. As long as the moon exists, the reflection exists, and it will remain in the water. It's something irrefutable. It just is. And Skull Knight continues saying that even he and Guts, who also exist beyond this physical world, are mere reflections in the water. And Guts, stressed out as usual because Skull Knight keeps speaking in overly complicated ways using too difficult words, recalls the nickname that Skull Knight gave him, the Struggler. At this moment in the chapter, he was on his way to save Casca from the Tower of Albion, and he stands firm in that resolve. He will save Casca, that he will do with the power of his arm. And School Knight continues saying that because of the brand, Guts lives in the interstice. And as he rides away on horseback, he ends up with the resolution that perhaps Guts isn't the reflection in the water, but rather the fish that disrupts the moon's reflection. Mogaku Mono. This is the original Japanese term for the struggler. It is a pretty cool translation as far as I search it. And funny thing is that Miura writes Mogaku as the way to read the kanji, but the kanji itself, it's Ude, that means arm. So it's in artistic liberty. Many mangaka use this kind of visual wordplays as part of their narrative actually. So in the literal translation, Mogaku Mono would be the one who struggles desperately. When Guts leaves the band, all the tragedy happens and he faces it. He struggles desperately. He loses himself. He finds himself. He makes new friends along the way. True friendships. Unlike Griffith, who wanted people to submit to him, those by Guts' side, in what many call the band of the Black Swordsman, are there by their own will. They are free and they have experienced personal growth. I mean, Farnese, Isidoro, Shiriki, Serpico, they all have strong personalities. Everybody can point Farnese, and I can see again a comparison to Griffith. The way that Casca looked at Griffith is kind of similar to the way that Farnese looks up to Guts. So what is Guts' ultimate goal? Does he have a dream? My question is, does he even need this dream the way that Griffith idolized it? Something specific and immutable? From the very beginning, even without a clear reason, Guts keeps fighting. The urge to stay alive even when thoughts can form. This will, this urge that still fails. But instead of running away from the feelings again, Guts faces it. And wouldn't that already be a great reason? Does a dream need to be something noble? Why is desiring to be a king, to have a castle, better than simply live to take care of the beloved ones? Griffith himself calls his own dream before the eclipse a piece of junk. For me, in my view, Guts would already be that ideal friend that Griffith talks about, an equal, because he does not submit, because he fights against him, becoming his enemy. Guts is the man who abandoned the dragon named Yushao and embraced the child. He became the child and he said the sacred yes to himself. Thanks for watching. See you next time.